Awesome. Welcome, you guys. Today, we've got an amazing special guest. We have Darren over in New Zealand, who did bring CrossFit to New Zealand. That is one of his famous marks, but I believe also exercise sports scientist, nutritionist, the list goes on. So he can answer all of your questions today. And most importantly, he's going to be talking about fitness for real life. So no matter what level of fitness you're at, you guys will get a lot out of this session. I'm going to give the mic back over to Darren and make me not the host anymore. Bear with me. Make host. All right. And you are off and running. Here we go. Darren, thank you so much for joining us today. The Auckland team will love this.
Well, it's my pleasure. Hopefully we get a few of them joining in, if not now, but later on to view.
Yeah.
Very, very kind and gracious introduction. But as you mentioned, the topic today is about real life. My background for a wee while in terms of my sort of sporting career has been fitness, I guess, at the very extreme end, fitness as a sport, which many people sometimes, if they don't know too much about CrossFit, is all they know, that what they see on ESPN or YouTube. But and that's something I participated in a lot myself. I still coach some people at that highest level. But where I get the greatest pleasure is the application of the methodology, because that's actually the big difference. CrossFit is a methodology, first and foremost, of fitness. It just so happens that because it's very effective, it became one of the best ways to test the fittest in the world as well. But I do really take issue with just the general misunderstanding of that, because it probably means a lot of people don't employ those methods because they're a little bit intimidated by what they see. So that's what we're talking about today. It is what gives me the greatest pleasure, is how to apply fitness in a real life setting. And by real life, that means real people with real life demands on their time, with real life babies and stresses and jobs and commutes and all of the things. What I do want to say is I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. Certainly bring in more detailed questions if you like, but certainly try to understand that simple is the answer. Sometimes it sounds too easy, but that's where we want to start, right? If we start overcomplicating things, that's perhaps something for further down the track. So let's see, getting back in the tech side of it, if I can get this small presentation going. And play, that should work. All right. So there's really sort of 4 or 5 things that I want to talk about with regards to this. And the first one we're starting with is a quote by someone that I'm a big fan of, a long-time martial artist, who's now a long time trying to get back into martial arts, I think. But Bruce Lee, sort of the father of it, and I think he actually would have turned 65 just recently as well. So he's still got a big impact on the world, even though he's been gone a wee while. And he said that consistency trumps intensity. Okay, consistency trumps intensity. And another way to say that is regularity, or doing something for a long time is much more successful, or give you more success than doing something fast for a short time. And this could probably apply to a lot of things. And as humans, we tend to be kind of wired to fight against this. Another similar saying is overreacting in the short term and underreacting in the long term. And that, again, is perfect for fitness when fads are coming in a mile a minute and we all jump on it. And, next thing we are Pilates, yoga, keto eating faster. And a week later, we're CrossFitting, fruitarian, and the list goes on. When, of course, consistency is what we're chasing. So, one thing I want to talk about too with fitness, and what sometimes can make it hard, is it's not really supposed to exist. It's pretending to do work. My degree was called exercise physiology, and if I'd done that 50 years ago, it would have been called work physiology, because that's what it was. It was a study of work and what it did to our bodies. Physical labor, exercise is this frivolous thing that no one really had time for back then because they're too busy getting work done. So it's a weird kind of privilege that we find ourselves in, that we get to sort of pretend to do work, but at the same time, it's something that our bodies need to be healthy. So it still needs that stimulus. I'm sure a lot of people would kind of prefer they could take a pill just to get that sort of annoying task out of the way, but that is unlikely to happen anytime soon. Although sadly, there are scientists working on it. I, for one, hope they're never successful. So we seem to be getting it wrong, though. This pretend work that we're doing tends to happen in gyms or similar type settings. And some stats that I dragged up from, it was a couple of years ago now, but I think would be quite relevant given that we were interrupted by 2020, which messed everything up. But 63% of gym memberships go completely unused. Okay, so that means someone is walking in probably like on January the 1st or 2nd, buying a membership and never going back. Most memberships at these gyms, well, I guess there's a few now that are trying to do away with contracts, but generally, you're signing up for 6 or 12 months, they never step foot in the gym again, which is insane. 82% of these gym members who do go are going less than once a week. All right, so we're definitely missing out on a consistency there. 22% have quit 6 months into their membership, and 31% say they never would have paid that money had they known how little they would use it. Okay, so psychology aside, they had every intention, they at least thinking of going, but something about that environment is not persuading them to go back. Right? Now, I think you could probably classify people as like the gym or don't like the gym quite easily. There certainly would be a reasonably large group that are on the fence. They perhaps don't know why they don't go to the gym or why they don't really like the gym. There's some studies out there that suggest that gyms are set up a little bit like hotels, where they have a beautiful foyer to invite traffic in, but then the rooms are kind of like, because it doesn't matter once they got your money. And now that's an interesting one. And I've heard about, fancy setups, slick salespeople, et cetera, followed by very little help after that, where they're actually trying to reinforce these numbers. Again, I hope that it's not really true, or at least that it's small in practice. But the fact remains that these numbers exist, and so we've got to try and improve it. So how do we improve that consistency? Something I've been working on and talking about for a long time with my clients is the journey, not the destination. This is pretty much my favorite quote after the Bruce Lee one, and I'm very big on it. The thing is, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to do it. So if the gym isn't your thing, is there something else you can do for fitness? These days, there's no shortage of activities that you can sign up for, recreational sport. I know both New Zealand and Australia have no shortage of outdoor areas, whether it's hiking, swimming, sailing, paddleboarding, things like that. You've got to find something active that you enjoy. As I said, unfortunately, our bodies are wired this way, and until they invent the pill that does it all for us, we have to find some way to create that kind of stimulus. Otherwise, our bodies just don't work right. But if you feel that the gym is not the place for you to do that, then there's a ton of other options. I'm obviously biased that I own a gym, and I'll perhaps talk a little bit more in the sense of trying to persuade you to think about it, to at least consider it. But when we are talking about long-term health, fitness, longevity, health span, which is how long you are healthy for, okay? Because we can live longer hooked up to a machine these days, but we might not be healthy. So health span is a bit of a buzzword these days, and that's really what you're trying to maximize. It requires some kind of exercise. You need to be fitter, okay? Interesting stats show that it's a surprisingly low amount of exercise that will get that health span pushed up. But again, it's the consistency. Okay, so that's the hard thing. And most of us are arguing about whether high intensity exercise is better than resistance training, is better than long, slow cardio, is better than yoga. When the fact remains is if you pick something, stick with it, you're probably going to beat 99.9% of the population as far as living a long and healthy life. On that note, as I said about the gym, remember that we can learn to enjoy things we didn't previously. All right, that's what I was talking about. I'm going to try and persuade you that perhaps you can enjoy the gym one day. 12-year challenge versus a 12-week challenge. Now, this is one I've used in some of my advertising previously. It's very, very common that we are selling everyone on fast results in a short time, right? 6-week challenges, 8-week challenges, 12-week challenges. I actually went through a period where we closed enrollments to our gym in January. And it was maybe a bit of an arrogant thing to do, but it serves a point, or makes the point here. What I found was that anyone that joined my gym in January didn't stay, no matter what I was doing. Just some people tend to be, if they're making those New Year's resolutions, they are also the type of people that aren't going to keep them. All right. So it was easier to not waste energy on taking on new members in January. We'd wait till February and find that we would get people who are a bit more committed to their goals, because they weren't signing up because of this perceived need for to make a fresh start or anything like that. They were just making a decision, or perhaps changing gyms. However, a lot of the industry feeds on that kind of thought, and so hence you'll see a lot of these New Year, New You kind of challenges, and leading into summer, right? It's get shredded for summer, it's bikini body, it's all that stuff, and none of them are really saying, hey, we'll get you a bikini body in 12 years, because that is not going to sell. But that's generally the reality of it. And again, coming away from the short term or the aesthetic side of it, like how you look, it's years of practice. It's years of training to be getting to a place that you want to with your fitness and health. So again, I'm back to that consistency chat. How do we do that? How do we find something that we could stay engaged in for 12 years? Probably the longest you have ever done anything is go to school, and you kind of had to do that. So outside of school, what have you engaged in for more than a couple of years? And work doesn't count either, because you have to do that too. So it's a tough one. We're not wired for it. This is where we start getting into some of these deeper terms. But again, it's something I think is really important. You need to find something that's going to give you more fulfillment than fun. Okay. Now I see gyms that nowadays they look like nightclubs. They're dark and they've got these flashing purple strobe lights. And it's all about how much excitement and hype and fun we can create. And you've got the live DJ in there spinning the decks, and no one's really getting any fitter. It feels cool, and it's a great experience. But just like nightclubs, if we use that example, right? What happens with nightclubs? Eventually they fall out of favor, and you need to find another nightclub because that one's not cool anymore. And then you find something that does some other crazy thing, and everyone starts going to that nightclub for a while. And the cycle continues. So what I call exertainment is not going to work. If you are only going to exercise because of what you get out of it in terms of entertainment, it's unlikely to have any long-term sticking power with you. Okay, so you're looking for fulfillment, not fun. You're looking for purpose versus pain, because that's another thing, right? With those challenges, generally it's sort of this hardship. How hard can you suffer for 6 to 12 weeks? Extreme diets, extreme exercise, and there's almost this kind of pride in doing that, right? But you tend to pop out the other end, maybe having made some progress, but unable to sustain it, and that's the problem. And then the cycle continues. So I can certainly give you some clues to that, but it's definitely something you're probably going to have to ask yourself. What kind of movement practice, what kind of sport or recreational activity makes me feel good on a deeper level, not just in that sort of thrilling, excitement, fun, entertaining way. Okay? What gives me purpose? And what would I do if I had let's say we'll come back to the aesthetics. If I had the body I wanted, what kind of exercise or what kind of activity would I still do? Okay. So goal setting, pretty important. And we talk about that a lot in this industry and elsewhere. But what I want to talk about is that the habits that we set around those goals are probably more important. Okay. So a goal like I want to lose 5 kilos is fine. Okay. But it's a very kind of external goal. Okay. Or extrinsic. A habit would be something that would lead us to that goal. Okay. So I will prepare healthy meals in advance. I'm going to make my lunch, on Sunday and have them all stacked in the fridge ready to go. That's a habit and a behavior that's going to lead you to lose those 5 kilos potentially. Okay. But only thinking about, I will lose 5 kilos makes it very, you're going to lose sight of that very soon. And it's not going to give you the roadmap to get there. Okay. So start thinking about the habits that you could set with your exercise, with your fitness, rather than just having a goal. Okay. Which is similar to this last point on the slide. What is your why? And coming back to why we do fitness, right? Yes, we have to. Okay, we do have to. But can we find a deeper reason than that? It gives us independence, right? You might find adventure, especially if it is outside. It gives us opportunity to do whatever we want. And for me, travel is a big one. I like to explore the outdoors as much as possible. Abs and a big deadlift, that's only really good for now. And it's not going to do much for us down the track. Okay. But again, that's what often happens, or what we find ourselves getting caught up in, is training in that sense. Like, we're just trying to get these short-term goals and we're missing out on the long term. Now, this one is something I've found fascinating. It blew my mind. I actually saw this it was a TED talk I saw on a flight to Australia, actually. And it's talking about sort of all-cause mortality. How do we live longer? And it compared a multitude of factors. And what was really interesting, if you look sort of towards the bottom there, exercise and body composition, it's got lean versus overweight there. They factor really low. And we know they're important, but this is kind of what I was getting at earlier in the talk, that they're not, like, in terms of living a long and healthy life, they'll actually have a small effect. You just have to remain consistent. The things that really boost our health span, and I'm skipping over some of these obvious ones: quit smoking, quit boozing, to the top there, social integration and close relationships. Now, you may not be able to see it, just how it's popped up with the chat there, but those graph lines go all the way to the right. Huge effect compared to all the others. And what that is essentially saying is, you need a gang, and you need to have people to talk to. Or another way I've heard it phrased is, you need a friend that you could cry in front of. Right? A friend that you could cry in front of. That's the kind of relationship we're talking about. And social integration is, again, I've heard it phrased a number of different ways, but one I like is, when you're out and about during your day, do you say hi to the mailman? Do you say hi to the checkout operator at the supermarket? Do you have people to interact with as you go about your day? Or are you locked in a room on a Zoom chat from 9 to 5? It's hard to prove, but there's studies that have suggested that simply being out and about and talking to people, even if they're not people on a deeper level, is so good for you. And if you think about it, it's kind of that classic village scenario, right? And that's where we find all those people who live for a very long time, is in these small little villages in Cyprus and Okinawa and places like that. And a big part of their behavior is interacting with people on a daily basis. That stuff is incredibly good for us. Now, what does it have to do with fitness? Well, what if you found groups and friends like this to do fitness with? Okay, we talked back about finding fulfillment, finding purpose. We talked about the statistics that are showing why it seems to be so hard to keep going to the gym. What I want to talk about is, well, maybe this is the missing factor. If we linked social integration, close relationships with our exercise, possibly even with our diet, then that could be the way to increase that consistency. Switching topics a little bit, this is a quick talk, and the the last time I spoke on nutrition, I think my record was 3 hours. That's easy to go down the rabbit holes. So we're trying to keep this one to 30. I did want to get into a little bit of nutrition, but part of an overarching fitness topic. Something else I think is missed when it comes to thinking about fitness, which is that similar to that sort of fulfillment versus fun, or that consistency versus intensity, is I think most of us still feel that fitness is where we burn all the fat, or maybe build some muscle, but mostly we're wanting to burn all the fat and chew up all the calories, and that's where that sort of that penance is done, and it's simply not the case. I'm wondering if I can drag. I don't know if I can. I'm not sure if those video blocks are overlaying that graph a little bit too much, but I can talk us through it. So here's the thing about food. It supplies us with two things. There's energy, which is brought about through carbohydrates and fat, and then there's nutrients, okay? And that's your vitamins and your minerals and protein, okay? Now, we are looking for energy balance, not deprivation, i.e. trying to eat less food, right? We're trying to find balance overall. There's multiple factors that go into it. We tend to get really caught up on depriving ourselves of energy. But what if we tried instead to simply focus on nutrients? Okay. I like to call, when people say, how do you eat? I'll say, I'm a nutritarian. I focus on foods that have a lot of nutrients in it. Okay. That's veggies, meat, whatever. But the food that has the most nutrients in it, the most protein, the most vitamins, the most minerals, and that tends to take care of the rest. Balance over deprivation. Okay, so one thing we know is that you can't out-train your diet. Even, I come from this background of what are considered the hardest workouts in the world, but a tough CrossFit workout still only burns a fraction of your daily calories. And if you look on that graph at the top there, it's funny enough, it's labeled EAT, EAT, that is exercise activity thermogenesis, which is a fancy name for the calories you burn exercising. All right, out of our total calorie burn in that day, look how small that piece is. All right, the next one, TEF, is the thermic effect of food, and that means basically the energy you burn chewing and digesting food. Okay, so you can get a bigger workout, let's say, from eating food than you can from actually working out in terms of calories burned. All right, if that was the only thing that mattered, which for the sake of this graph it is, you're gonna get more effect by increasing your TEF than you are your EAT. All right, how do we do that? Protein, fiber, okay, meat and vegetables, right, which should be the core of most people's diet. Of course, if you don't eat meat, you need some other source of protein, but basically protein and veggies, or protein and fiber, or protein, vitamin, minerals, again, nutrients. Maximizing your intake of those will drive up your TEF, which will actually have a greater impact on calorie burn, or as we're saying here, improve your energy balance. The next one is NEAT, that is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and the one that we mostly get that from is walking. Okay, walking to and from work, walking down to the mailbox, doing gardening, etc., etc. That is all the activity you do in the day that is not classified as exercise. Now, again, look how big that is. So 10,000 steps, people really knew what they were talking about. That's tough if you're in an office environment. It's tough if you're in a Zoom office environment to get those 10,000 steps, let alone do some exercise as well. But look how much of an effect it has on that energy balance. So again, this has come from a gym owner. I'm exhorting people to put more effort into walking than I am to go into the gym, because I know long term that's actually going to have a bigger benefit. It sounds crazy, but the people we are studying right now, the centenarians, octogenarians, the people who live for a really long time, they don't exercise, they walk and they do chores. So as much as, like I geek out on this stuff, I've done a master's degree on exercise physiology, it turns out that exercise doesn't really matter if we want to live a long time. Again, it's just a privileged thing that we get to do. You want to walk and move, and that's going to have a huge impact on that energy balance. And lastly, our basal metabolic rate, which is the energy we burn if we just lay in bed and did nothing, right? The stuff we need to stay alive. And a lot of people say that that can't be changed, or at least can't be changed significantly. But one thing that does change it is changing your body size. Okay, so on a day-to-day basis, no, we can't impact it, but over a long-term period, we can. Okay, so building muscle will increase your basal metabolic rate. Now look at the graph again. 70% of the calories we burn in a day is from your basal metabolic rate. So if you were to gain muscle, which just so happens can be improved by eating protein, so increasing your TEF as well, then you're going to drive that up as well. Okay, so this is actually I guess it's almost an argument against fitness, but it's really trying to put fitness into perspective along with nutrition, and perhaps a way you haven't seen before, is that focusing on building muscle and focusing on walking, so we are still talking about exercise to a certain degree, will actually have a greater impact on your energy balance than anything else. Okay, so too many people are fitnessing for fat burning, when even if that is your goal, you should be fitnessing for improving your energy balance through muscle building and daily activity. Last point there was sleep. That is another thing that actually will have an effect on BMR, but in the sense of not getting it will depress it. Okay, so getting more sleep will help avoid depressing that BMR. All right, so we're not really increasing our BMR through more sleep, but we are avoiding the depression of it. All right, your body goes into hibernation mode when you don't get enough sleep, and then you're at work not being productive, and you're also not burning a lot of fat. All right, so it's a double loss. Okay, so weight training. I talked about that. We've got to build muscle. Now, right at the start of this, I'm just conscious of time there. Right at the start of this, I said that you've got to find something that you like. All right, and I still stick to that. But this is where I make a pitch for finding a way to get some kind of resistance training into your exercise routine. And notice I don't say weight training per se, although some of you might recognize this lady. This is Vanessa Redgrave, once called the greatest actress of our time, although that was a little while ago. She's about 75 here, cranking out the deadlifts, and I think she's 85 at the moment. So she's doing well. Weight training is important, but you can find other ways to add resistance training. Put on a pack and go for a hike. All right, that's going to work. Go swimming. Find ways to create resistance to your body. But I certainly want to give a pitch for weight training. I do think it's the most important form of exercise for reasons I spoke about just before. Yes, the short term, we can improve our body composition. You get toned, increase our sports performance if that's something we're interested in. Find a mate is something that many of us are interested in, and I think that's a lot of the reasoning behind many people going to the gym, so it's worth mentioning. And again, I want to circle back to the long-term stuff. Fancy words, insulin, glucose sensitivity, that basically means your metabolism is under better control. Again, see the last slide. This is a big one. It buffers injury and illness. Now, what I mean by that is if you hurt yourself, and it's going to happen, you will recover faster if you have more muscle. If you get sick, and I'm talking potentially serious sicknesses like cancer, you will recover faster if you have more muscle. Right? That it gives you a buffer in the sense of you'll lose muscle when you have cancer. Right? And I'm actually just speaking with a client recently who's diagnosed with bowel cancer, and that's exactly what her doctor said to her was, you're lucky because you have this muscle. The treatment you're going to go through is going to whittle that muscle away. But imagine if you didn't have it. Right? So that's actually going to mean she'll pop out the other end in much better shape than someone who was lacking that muscle to begin with. Sarcopenia is is known as a disease of muscle wastage, and it's something we go through as we get older. But as you can see here, Vanessa is offsetting that sarcopenia by continuing to train. Falling over and breaking a wrist or a hip is another really terrible thing that happens to us as we get older, and the main reason for that is we are not strong enough to either A, stand up, or B, to resist that fall when it happens. Okay, so I'm huge on building muscle for these longer term reasons. It's a tough sell, believe me. I'm sitting there with a 28-year-old who signed up to lose 5 kilos, and I'm talking to them about having independence into their 90s. Very easy to lose the sale, but that's really the reality of what we're all facing. It's just unfortunately not talked about enough. Last point there, resistance training needs to be functional, it needs to be full body, and it needs to be fairly heavy. All right. I see too often that people sort of go through the motions with the resistance training and avoid progressing weights. Now, it doesn't mean that it needs to be scary heavy. This means to be fairly heavy for you. So when you lift weights, by all means, start slow, learn how to do them well, but you need to be trying to progress those loads over time. Okay, now there's plenty of people you could get to help you with that, whether it's in the gym you're currently at or online or read some books and educate yourself about it. But that's a key thing I see. It's a shame to see people who put so much effort into going to the gym, but then and have that consistency, but then they're failing to progress through the lack of progression. Okay, so making sure that you are looking for ways to progress that way. Full body means exercising the full body. All right, body part splits are for steroid taking bodybuilders. No offense to any steroid taking bodybuilders currently viewing this, but that's how they're able to do it. There's assistance involved, and also they're sore all the time. We want to avoid taking our cues from bodybuilding, but it is a very pervasive thing. And some of you might be wondering why I mention it, but honestly, it's crazy how many gyms program in a bodybuilding sense, as in the sport. And we're looking to build our bodies, which is quite a different thing. All right. That is it. The last point I wanted to make then, just before I wrap that up, was functional. And that is the movements you do should replicate everyday life. Okay, so that is picking stuff up, it's putting stuff down, it's pushing stuff away from you, it's pulling stuff towards you. Okay, the things you do in everyday life. I'm going to speak about this stuff a little bit more in my talk on Thursday, which is more specifically about strength training or resistance training. But it doesn't have to be complicated. As I said, squat, bend, push, pull, carry. That's pretty much the movements that our body does, and those are the ones we should replicate in the gym. So I'm going to kick her over to questions, and I only just went over time.
Awesome. No, that was perfect. Thank you, Darren. That was awesome. Thank you so much. So good. Michael asked earlier, how many times would you do CrossFit in a week?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, now, if you are referring to CrossFit specifically versus exercise, I'm not sure if you're using that as a blanket term, but if it is CrossFit, it's actually a hard one to answer. I think, so I do want to answer a different way. I want to see people exercising every day. Okay, we need to move every day. So then it comes down to your experience and then the intensity of those particular workouts. So if we go CrossFit as a blanket term, that is often, and many gyms do program this way, very intensely. So usually that then means I'm recommending the lower side 3 or 4 times a week. As you gain experience and you build your body up to it, you may find that you can increase the volume, because the ways we progress exercise is pretty much load, volume, whether that's in the program, like more sets, more reps, intensity. So you can train yourself to be able to train more often, right? But you have to start slow and build up. So it does tend to depend on where you're at. I would average 5 times a week, okay, but I'm active every day. So let's say that's 5 CrossFit workouts, 1 mountain bike ride, and 1 paddleboard or ocean swim or something like that. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that helps. But I think if we just replace that with resistance training, just in case that's what you meant, that's going to be also 3 to 5 times, again, depending on experience.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And leading on from that, a question from the Facebook group from Chloe. She was wondering if there's if anyone can start into CrossFit, or if you suggest that they need a prerequisite of training before they start into training for CrossFit?
It's a great question. Every CrossFit is different, so it's worth doing your research. The methodology is the same, but the interpretation, I guess, it varies. Now, that's both a good and a bad thing. It means that there's a style of CrossFit or a group, as in a tribe for everyone. So what I mean by that is, actually, I can use myself as an example. My average member is about 43 years old. It's about 50-50 men and women. They all have kids. Most of them work. And so the style of training we do is quite different to directly across the road. And I'm not kidding, directly across the road, another CrossFit gym that the average age, and now I'm only guessing, but is mid to late 20s. So they have a completely different approach to fitness, right? They tend to not have kids. They are perhaps not fully engaged in their careers just yet. They have a lot of extra time and money. And so the way that they train is quite different. So more intensely, heavier loads, more regularly versus my members, where we are, we're working on building consistency around their very busy lives, shuttling kids to school and sport. We're trying to build that consistency up from, say, 2 times to 3 or 4. We're managing injuries, we're managing stress. So our training is very different. So that's the first thing, is find a gym that seems to match your vibe, and who you are, what you're into, where you're currently at. And then generally, this is just my opinion, the best gyms will have the greatest barriers to entry. And by that, I mean, they will require you to do the most training, the most practice of the fundamentals, perhaps work one-on-one with a coach, talk about nutrition, all those sort of things before you join group coaching, okay? Because that's going to lead you to the best possible results. That's going to give you the greatest possible consistency, and of course, longevity, staying at that gym if you have a nice slow on ramp into it. Okay, so I hope that helps.
No, that was perfect. Awesome. Thank you. And any other questions, I'll let you know, but that was great. Thank you so much, Darren. So insightful. And that was the basics. Like, you really explained it well. So I'm going to suggest a few clients today to jump on and watch this replay, and we'll send the replay link out to everybody. So watch out for your inbox, and thanks again. We'll see you later in the week.
My pleasure.
And tech went great. So who could ask for more? Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Have a great day over there. See you guys.